A Trump campaign memo is calling her dangerously liberal. His vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, doubling down on the message, saying she's a million times worse than Biden. CNN's Daniel Strauss joins me with more. You just heard that reporting there from Lauren Fox, where this memo is sent out saying, do not waste time on talking about anything else but what she would mean to this country, her policy, for example. The anything else has already been spoken. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm hearing that despite this, at the top of the ticket for Republicans, there is I guess you could call it very charitably, an experimentation going on attack lines. The former president, Donald Trump, overnight posted a number of Truth Social posts with a range of attacks and criticisms of Harris. You can see them right here. And Vance himself has also weighed in and is trying out some attack lines. I think we've got the audio for that.
You cannot, for 3.5 years, take a guy who clearly didn't have the mental capacity to do the job. Kamala Harris lied about it. My Senate Democratic colleagues lied about it. The media lied about it. Every single person who saw Joe Biden knew that he wasn't capable of doing the job. And for 3 years, they said nothing until he became political dead weight.
And look, this is a sign overall that Republicans feel a little flat-footed right now. They did not expect that Joe Biden would drop out of the race abruptly and that they would have to move this quickly to pivot to focusing on Kamala Harris. This comes after months and months of Republicans pretty eagerly attacking Biden on his age. And now they have to pivot to a younger candidate who will contrast with Donald Trump.
It's really interesting. J.D. Vance had a bit of a weird moment where he was talking about Mountain Dew and somehow saying that him drinking it people would say it was racist. It was an odd comment. But now talk to me about what you're hearing Trump talk about when it comes to why he chose J.D. Vance.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the end, it came down to a few options. It came down to Marco Rubio, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, and Vance. And Trump himself has said that they got along very well. This is despite Trump's efforts to move the party away from hard right positions on social issues like contraception and abortion. But Trump himself has not mentioned in explaining why he picked Vance any policy issues. Instead, it's about how sort of chemistry. Take a listen.
We've always had a good chemistry, and originally JD was probably not for me, but he didn't know me. And then when we got to know each other, he liked me maybe more than anybody liked me, and he would stick up for me, and he'd fight for the worker as much as I fight for the worker. We just had an automatic chemistry.
So what we see right now is that Trump himself, in picking Vance, picked someone that he felt he got along well with, who could appeal to voters in the Midwest that his campaign feels are key to him winning a re-election right now. And that's the explanation we've got. Still, though, Sarah, I gotta say that over the next few weeks and months, Democrats are going to be hitting Vance for his positions and past comments on abortion and tying that to Trump, which is not the position Trump wanted to be in.
Daniel Strauss, thank you so much for your reporting. Kate?
Let's talk about all this right now. Republican strategist and former RNC communications director Doug Heye is here, as well as Democratic strategist and CNN political commentator Maria Cardona. Great to see you guys. Thanks for being here. Great to have you in studio, Doug. What do you think of I think as Doug talked about it, the Trump-Vance chemistry, instant chemistry, as Donald Trump will say, how they present to voters, both base voters and swing voters. What do you see here? And then we'll move on to the rest.
Look, Donald Trump has never been a series of policy prescriptions. Donald Trump has been an attitude. For good or bad, that's who he's been. Right. And so I don't think it's a real surprise that since he doesn't need a Mike Pence character or support in the way that he did in 2016, that he's going to get somebody who's really close attitudinal to him. So then point two is, do I get along with the person? And the more you praise Donald Trump, the more you get along with Donald Trump. No surprise. Maria,
on this point, Tim Alberta, great reporter with The Atlantic, good friend, had some insight on how the race has been kind of been a signal of how things have shifted since Sunday, saying this in a tweet. Most striking thing I heard from Trump allies yesterday was the second guessing of J.D. Vance, a selection they acknowledged that was born of cockiness, meant to run up margins with the base in a blowout rather than persuade swing voters in a nail biter. I read that and I'm kind of wondering, what could that mean or suggest maybe for how Harris is calculating her VP pick?
Well, I think what it means is that she is much smarter, much more strategic, knows what needs to be done in terms of adding to the coalition, adding to the group of voters that she is going to attract to her campaign in order to win, which is exactly the opposite of what Donald Trump did with his pick of J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, and I think this is what they're complaining about and exactly what they just described what they were trying to do, they're not doing any addition. Kate, and as you know, in an election, especially one that is won on the margins here, you need addition. They wanted to double down on their MAGA base, but they don't really need to double down on their MAGA base. They have their MAGA base locked in. And J.D. Vance represents some of the most extreme positions on some of the most important issues that Democrats are going to be putting front and center. Daniel's right on the issue of abortion. J.D. Vance is probably at the extreme. He doesn't believe in any exceptions for life of the mother or for rape or incest. That is not where the country is, and certainly not where Donald Trump wants to be in terms of this becoming front and center for them moving forward. So I don't blame them for second guessing when they picked J.D. Vance. I think a lot of people, including Republican strategists, were scratching their heads thinking, what were they thinking?
The NRCC, let's talk about the campaign arms and the kind of advice that's being thrown around, because they need to they need to refocus now. The NRCC saying, as Lauren Fox was reporting, essentially stick to the policy, stick to what she would quote unquote do in terms of Kamala Harris, and stop talking about anything else. Obviously, that may be a suggestion of maybe Tim Burchett and others maybe stop talking about her as a DE&I hire. But you also have the Trump campaign putting out a memo, subject being state of play day one. Doug, focus, preparing to launch a full-scale assault against Kamala Harris, describing her as dangerously liberal and attacking her on policies, inflation, immigration, electric cars, and crime. The line that stuck out to me in the memo and how they're trying to focus maybe messaging is same year, same people, same record of failure, same results. Do you think this works?
This is what you want to do if you're the party committees. And here are the joys and the perils of being in House or Senate leadership, regardless of party. How many times did you call me when I worked in House leadership and say, hey, Steve King, a name we haven't used very often lately, Steve King just said this, what's your response? And I would typically send it to voicemail because I didn't have a good answer. And then Dana Bash would call me on my cell phone, send it to voicemail, don't have a good answer. This is that same situation. It's very hard to keep your members in line, even when you have a self-disciplined message. But what I would guess right now is if they were updating that memo for the House Republican Conference meeting right now, they would include language on the segment that you just aired, on what people are looking at, on what they can afford, and their concerns that go back to basically the same numbers that it was in 2008, which was a change election. Trump is trying to run as a change agent here. Those numbers buttress that, and it highlights that it's not just Kamala Harris and whoever she picks. It's still the Biden-Harris administration that Trump is running against.
And you see in contrast, Maria, and I'll play this for you, in contrast, you see already from the now Harris campaign saying past versus future, sure, we can have that discussion now. They're just trying to flip it on their head. And also, we heard maybe a hint of some of Kamala Harris's messaging kind of straight out of the gate when she was speaking at campaign headquarters yesterday about Donald Trump. Let me play this.
In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
This lands with what segment of voters do you think that she needs to be laser focused on now? Also Donald Trump needs to be focused on as well.
I think that was a brilliant riff, Kate, because it talks to a whole spectrum of voters. The base of the Democratic Party, right? Black voters, Latino voters, young voters, LGBTQ, women voters, but it also speaks to independent voters, suburban women, perhaps common sense Republicans, never Trumpers, because this is exactly what we all need to be reminding the American people what Donald Trump represents. He represents somebody who is even willing to break the law, and he has done it throughout his life to get what he wants. He is not in politics for public service. He is not in politics to make Americans' lives better. He is not in politics to help your family or my family or Doug's family try to live a better life. He is in politics to make his own life better. And specifically now, he is in politics and in this election to stay out of jail. That is a great contrast moving forward.
It's game on, 36, 40 hours in is what we're seeing here.
And by the way, since we're talking about J.D. Vance and his Diet Mountain Dew, if you look at it, that is a brat summer drink, just like your outfit.
Yeah,
Let's keep this in mind.
I was waiting for you to try to pull this in. Unintentional, but thank you very much. I think it's a
Good one,
compliment.
Doug.
I'm unclear.
I don't know either.
None of us know anymore, but that's okay.